Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, our latest look at the Indiana housing market. An Indiana chocolate startup unveils its newest creation. Our monthly Trendiana segment spotlights Indiana's best hot dogs. Two entrepreneurs bank on bamboo to help with night sweats. USA football is underway with its latest effort to address concussions. And our panel of insiders takes on the top business stories of the week. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Indiana's housing inventory has been tight for years, with many buyers having to pay above list prices. Why is it happening, and how long will it continue? Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Indiana Realty broker Greg Cooper joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick to break it down.
We've been talking about it for a long time, back to 16, 17?
Yeah.
Still out there, this tight inventory?
It is, and really it began back during the crash, Gary. On February 27, 2009, the largest home builder in the state of Indiana ceased its operations. So they had built tens of thousands of homes in Indiana over the previous decade, give or take, and all of a sudden they're gone. Now, that was not highly impactful in 2009-10. We weren't building a lot of homes, but the net effect over the last 10, 11 years is that we're way down on the number of homes for available people who want to buy them.
So it really hasn't gotten a lot better these last couple of years.
It's getting worse progressively. And it's not a huge jump, but it sure feels like it when you're trying to buy your first home and six other people are standing next to you throwing a bunch of money at the same house that you're just trying to move into.
Give us an example. When we talk about bidding wars, how crazy is it out there?
If you're in a springtime market, you might have a $225,000 to $250,000 home, depending upon what part of the state you're in. And you might be, if it's really a cherry, you might have a half a dozen people that you're bidding against. You might be 4 or 5% above the list price by the time you're going to get a chance to buy it. That gets a little better as we get into the latter part of the year, but it's still challenging.
And this is very much statewide, not just here in central Indiana, but you're talking all over the state of Indiana.
If you got a Craftsman dollhouse, you can pretty much bet there's going to be somebody who wants it just as bad as you do.
As you look at some of the other factors and look at as we head toward the end of the year, what should prospective home buyers and sellers, what should they be thinking about?
Well, they need to know that there's going to be a little bit better time during the year when they can try and approach buying. Not everybody wants to buy a home in November and December, but the truth is you're going to have less competition to buy a property when you get into those 2 months of the year. We know that from the current data that we've had, and it's very recent and hot off the presses, we're going to probably start 2020 in a very similar fashion the way we started 2019.
That's what I was going to say. Looking ahead to next year, based on these dynamics and some of the numbers from the Indiana Realtors Association, you're looking at 2020 maybe at least starting out the same.
Yeah, our friends at the Indiana Association of Realtors have just given us some great data, and we sure appreciate that. We're down 7% approximately for the year in closed sales. What? Most people can't believe that. And at the same time, we're down about 7% year to year, 18 to 19, in new listings, which tells us in the crystal ball what 2020 is probably going to start out like.
Do you sense any improvement? We've talked a lot about the new home market, new construction market has been tough, has struggled. Any improvement in that side of things?
We've got great home builders in the state of Indiana who are trying to keep up, but we're all in a cautionary place because we all know what happened a decade ago, and they haven't forgotten, and nor have the people who've done business regularly forgotten that. There is a secondary thing contributing to all of this right now, Gary, and it's the last 2 or 3 years, and that is that home sellers who want to move are afraid to put their homes on the market because they got nowhere to go. And that's kind of another psychological improbable in all of this that makes it that much more challenging for the inventory to improve.
Final question, any update crystal ball on mortgage rates and where you see those going? Obviously next year is presidential election year.
Yeah, that's going to be a real wild card, and probably not till we get through the first quarter, I would suspect, next year. But the reality is that right now where we sit, barring weird geopolitical and financial things that come about, we're probably going to have some consistency in that regard with a little bit of a fluctuation. 30-year rates, depending upon credit score, all that in the low 4s, some in the upper 3s, gotcha. Really incredibly affordable.
Greg Cooper, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, is always great perspective on a very interesting market. I know you're keeping busy. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for being happy to be here.
Still to come, a look at this year's Cybertech Midwest Conference, and we tell you where to find Indiana's best hot dogs. But first, Matt Rubin and his wife Sarah originally developed trade secret chocolate because her food allergy kept her from enjoying most kinds of chocolate. So Chadi, the parent company, is now expanding its offerings. Matt Rubin came in studio to talk about the company's story and growth.
Interesting how this started and the roots of Sochati in trade secret chocolate bars that you were on the innovators with Dr. K.
We were.
Back in 2014, I think. But talk about the idea, because I know your wife has a dairy allergy, and that really is what prompted the start of things.
She does. This all began out of a need where we were going through our cabinets, getting rid of different products that had milk in it, and chocolate was the one thing that my wife could not emotionally part with.
Yeah.
And so that led to the creation of a chocolate bar. And while we were launching that chocolate bar company, we noticed that people really enjoyed the experience of visiting the chocolate bar facility.
Talk about Sochati and what makes it unique, what makes it special. We're going to talk about this warmer in a minute, but the chocolate itself is the liquid part of the. Is that what's really attractive and unique about it?
It is. We set out to really deliver the chocolate maker's experience to the end consumer. So, to a chocolate maker, chocolate is a liquid. We work with a liquid. We see a liquid. It flows in front of us. It's beautiful. To a chocolate maker, chocolate has fresh flavors and aromas. We roast it on site, and we noticed that when people could experience the chocolate maker's experience, it was emotional. We said, how do we deliver that to end consumers? We put our heads down for 5 years in R&D, pulled our heads up, and we had a whole battery of technology that really supported the launch of this new product category.
Yeah, all natural, and it's pretty simple, just three ingredients.
Three simple ingredients.
Yeah.
So our philosophy is you create the flavor and you work very hard to preserve it.
All right, let's talk about this warmer now, because I know that's going to be, you're going to release that a little bit later this year maybe, but talk about that and how it works in concert with the chocolate itself.
The Sochati warmer makes chocolate faster than a cup of coffee. So if you walk into your kitchen, you say, do I spend 5 minutes making myself a pot of coffee, or I spend 30 seconds having 2 shots of delicious chocolate? And so we wanted to deliver this so that people can create a moment for themselves on demand.
Very interesting. And you've got a production facility now on the north side of Indianapolis. You're already looking to expand production capabilities, right?
We are expanding our production capabilities to scale with demand of the Sochati warmer. We have 2,500 Sochati warmers that we're launching this fall, and we already have a wait list.
And where can folks get the chocolate now? Because I know you're in several different, in stores and online both, right?
We are. We have several retail locations in Indianapolis. We have restaurants, including Mimi Blues and several others. We have retail locations, including Needler's Market and the best chocolates in town. And we're also available nationally online through Amazon.
Indiana innovation built right here in Indiana in the chocolate space, which is a sweet way to go. Matt Rubin, congratulations to you and your wife on this development. Really an entrepreneurial venture. We look forward to following the story.
Thank you very much for your time.
Later in the podcast, a look at the best Hoosier hot dogs and can new fashion help women sleep? But now, Indianapolis recently hosted the Cybertech Midwest Conference, focusing on global threats, solutions, innovations, and technologies. Among the speakers, Aviv Ezra, Consul General of Israel to the Midwest. He spoke with Gary Dick on site at last week's event.
Well, you are in Indianapolis for 2 reasons, really, here at the Indiana Convention Center in downtown Indianapolis, the Cybertech Midwest Summit.
Correct.
But also, I think an interesting element, this pop-up consulate. Tell us about that.
Correct. As the Israeli Consul General to the Midwestern United States, we're based in Chicago. But for us, it's an understanding that we want to relocate our consulate from time to time to the most important centers that make a difference in the relationship with Israel. Guess which one? Which state was the first one? It was the great state of Indiana, following a superb conversation and a superb visit with your governor, Governor Eric Holcomb, who has visited Israel. Had the honor of meeting him about 2.5 years ago. And he promised me, he said, we're going to be moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It took us 71 years, but we'll make it happen. I said to him, Mr. Governor, as a reciprocal element, I will be moving my consulate from Chicago to Indianapolis at least for 4 or 5 days, and here we are. This is what we call the pop-up consulate.
Well, and that relationship between Israel and Indiana seems to be really gaining momentum. You represent 9 states here in the Midwest, but Indiana has a lot going on with Israel.
That is correct. For us, Indiana is a role model of how to really make the enhancement of the relationship to a better level. We work on 3 levels: the government to government, the business to business, and the people to people. And for us, the example of the governor's visit to Israel and a reciprocal visit of one of Israel's senior ministers just recently, the Minister of Ag here in Indiana, paved the way to that. So we have government relations, government to government, in terms of governors, members of Congress, U.S. senators, state legislators. I had the honor of speaking on the floor on behalf of the State of Israel, with the Speaker Basma inviting me. Business to business, we have now Cybertech Midwest, located right here for 3 years. This is the second out of 3. We're very honored to have about 15 Israeli companies here making a presence right here in the state of Indiana, believing in the potential. And of course, also the third level, what we call the P2P, the people to people. We have a great relationship with the Indiana National Guard, for example.
Talk about Israel, for those who don't know, and innovation and entrepreneurship. Outside of Silicon Valley, no place where innovation is more important than Israel. Give us a thumbnail of that innovation piece.
That is a very good point, because today, when you look at Israel, the first thing that comes into mind is the conflict-related matters. But Israel is much more than just about a conference. It's high-tech, IT, telecommunications, medical, cyber security, artificial intelligence. We have in Israel today about 6,000 startup companies. We're number 1 in the world per capita. We're number 3 in the world in absolute number, after 2 small countries called America and China. 500 startup companies that deal with the automotive industry, 300 startup companies that deal with cyber. At the end of the day, we encourage every person that is involved in the high-tech industry to come to Israel. We're going to have a direct non-stop flight coming up very soon from the Midwest to Israel. We didn't have that for 3 decades. It's going to be inaugurated next year. And we welcome all of your viewers to come to Israel sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Indiana, or Israeli companies, are increasingly locating and investing in Indiana. There are operations in Portage, in Evansville, in Richmond, to name a few. When the governor and others visited Israel in 2018, a memorandum of understanding was signed. Not a typical MOU, ceremonial in nature. This has some teeth and could really lead to some interesting partnerships.
Correct. The idea was to make sure that we're going to have an opportunity and a platform to bring Israeli companies to invest right here in Indiana, and vice versa with the relationship. The key person, or the key quarterback for that, is Secretary of Commerce, my good friend Jim Challenger, has been traveling to Israel, just recently came back, already recognized and identified at least a few Israeli companies that are willing to come here and to invest further as Israeli investment over here, to bring job opportunities and the Israeli money here. We'll make it happen.
Final question for you. The sectors of the economy that really seem to be a natural fit, I think cybersecurity and related issues, and also the ag biosciences.
You're right. Ag tech, water technologies, cyber technologies, artificial intelligence are the 4 things that we feel are suitable, of course, working with our Indiana partners. And we will make an effort to bring the right people here. We believe in investment in this relationship, and I think that the best is yet to come.
Consul General of Israel to the Midwest, Aviv Ezra.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, the benefits of bamboo-based sleepwear, and USA Football again puts a spotlight on concussions. But first, we're wrapping up National Hot Dog Month, and Indiana has no shortage of offerings. You can find top dogs in Portage, Indy, Fort Wayne, and more. Yelp Midwest Regional Director Brittany Smith has a look in this month's Trendiana segment.
I have to say, this may be the most difficult interview I've done, because it's hard for me to stay away from this. I love hot dogs. And Nick's, we're going to talk about Nick's in a minute. Oh, they
Only
have
a few more minutes.
Unbelievable. And that's what I think is interesting. Hot dogs been around, obviously, for a long, long time.
Yes.
But today, there's so many different options, and the popularity of hot dogs seem to be at an all-time high.
Yes, for sure. And it's a beautiful thing, because several of these businesses have been around a long time, and it's a great family-friendly, affordable option for people.
All right, let's go around the state of Indiana. We've got a great list of places. Garcia's Hot Dogs is on the Near East side of Indianapolis.
Yes, at 16th and Emerson. Not a spot you would notice. You would be driving by. It's actually a food cart. You'd actually expect something like a brick and mortar for something like this, but people have been lining up for Polish hot dogs and the bacon wrap dogs there for a long time. So that's a great spot, just a stone's throw from downtown.
Sounds great. Okay, let's go up to Northeast Indiana and Fort Wayne. I'm familiar, so many people are. Fort Wayne's famous Coney Island Wiener Stand. I worked in Fort Wayne, my first job out of college, so I remember this place very, very well.
It's a classic. It's the oldest restaurant in Fort Wayne. They've been around for more than 100 years. Yelp reviews really love it. They have the classic, nostalgic vibes of a diner, glass bottles of Coke. They sell over 2,000 hot dogs on average every day. So really fun staple for Fort Wayne.
That That's a
Yes,
good
fun
stat.
fact.
Thank you. Fat Dan's back here in central Indiana, Carmel, Broad Ripple, and Mass Ave as well.
Yes,
right?
several locations. People love the Chicago dogs that they have there. They're also dog friendly on Mass Ave location. And then if you want to add a side to it, their loaded tots are another classic at Fat Dan's, loaded with the pulled pork. That's definitely one of those stick to your ribs businesses.
Very good. Also here in Indianapolis, Nick's Chili Parlor, 26th and Lafayette Road, and Nick's responsible for this great spread we have in front of us. Family owned, right? Been around for a long time.
Yes, since 1974, Nick and Jim Ferris started the business off. Took 6 months to come up with the chili recipe, and now it has stemmed into a beautiful business where you can go in, have fun diner vibes, very welcoming. People go back there regularly, and tailgating season is just around the corner, so you can place your orders, have a whole order for a family for chili and dogs.
Got a big pot of chili here on set.
Smells
as
delicious.
Well. All right, let's go down to Bloomington and Naughty Dogs.
Yes, Naughty Dogs. So the unique thing about this business is they also offer delivery through Yelp and vegetarian dogs, which you don't find at a lot of spots. So people love that you can get also a vegetarian and vegan chili topped on your dog. So something that you don't typically find elsewhere.
Great. Okay, our last stop is in Northwest Indiana. Get a great statewide flavor here. Depot Hot Dogs in Portage.
Yes, so this is another business. It's seasonal, in the summer only open. It's in a park. So you go, very casual setting, go to a picnic bench. You can get some of their classics that are loaded up with like Mexican themed hot dogs, barbecue themed. Again, back to all the amazing toppings.
And again,
you can find.
these are all entrepreneurs and business owners, locally owned, and really doing a great job.
Yeah, been around for decades. It's amazing.
Good. Brittany, as always, great stuff. Thanks to Nick's, too, for bringing this great spread here, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, that's right. Time to eat.
All right.
Later in the podcast, USA Football plans a crash course on concussions, and we get perspective on the top stories of the week from our panel of insiders. But now, 2 women have developed stylish, bamboo-based sleepwear for menopausal women with night sweats. The idea for a cool revolution began with a text conversation complaining about night sweats. Co-founders Laura Musall and Mindy Ford tell Kylie Valletta what happened from there in the business of health.
Laura, let's start with you. How did you make that leap from one woman having night sweats to launching your own company?
It was really by accident. I woke up the first time I had night sweats, and I started texting some girlfriends complaining about it, and one thing led to another, and I said, there really needs to be pajamas for this. And someone said, yeah, you should do that. And I started researching them, and I was like, there really aren't any out there. There are some that are made out of polyester or some other fabrics that seemed really hot. There were some that looked like old lady pajamas. There were some that only came in limited sizes. And so, Mindy and I had never talked about starting a business, but that day we started talking and decided, you know what, let's do this.
All right, and one thing led to another. So these pajamas are made out of a bamboo-based material. So Mindy, tell us, how did you come to decide on that particular material?
Actually, we talked to a whole lot of people. One of our consultants is a menopause specialist from the IU School of Nursing, Janet Carpenter, and she told us early on to make sure that we find a natural fiber that would work best. And so we found this bamboo fabric, and it's silky smooth, it's silky soft, it's antibacterial, it wicks away moisture. We've even had a customer in Louisville say that it feels like butter. So we're proud that it has all those properties to.
And the material is from Vancouver, and important to mention, also manufactured pretty close to home in Chicago.
Right.
So, Laura, you said you designed this on your dining room table in Fisher's. Tell us about some of the design details that you think make the pajamas unique.
So when we were designing them, we wanted to find something that women in their 40s plus would feel comfortable in and confident in. And we talked to a whole bunch of people who told us what they loved, what they didn't love. So they're designed, the tops are designed to be fitted in the shoulders and the chest, and it's a little more forgiving around the waist. And they're long in the back, which people like the fact that it keeps everything covered. The pants and the shorts have pockets, big enough to keep your mobile device in. So that's been another huge plus for us.
Okay, so the business is really growing from what you've said, really taking off. Tell us about that.
Yes, Kylie, the sales have been amazing. Even though we've only been selling pajamas for about 4 months now, we have sold to women in 22 states, from New York to California and Michigan to Florida, and even multiple women in Canada. And what's even more exciting to say is that we're hearing back from customers that they're actually sleeping better because they're not waking up soaked in sweat.
And you sell exclusively online. Menopause may be a little difficult for some women to talk about. Do you find this is, in some way liberating, or is there a sense of community helping women solve this problem?
I think there really has been. I think that's a great question. Even though women go through the change, and 75% of us will have hot flashes and night sweats, women don't talk about it a lot. And what we found is we're talking about it a lot more, but we're also finding that customers are talking about it online. They're posting online about their own experiences, and others are chiming in to say, hey, we're in this with you, which is awesome.
Just a few seconds left. What's next for your company?
Colors.
Okay.
People want more colors, and we're working on that right now to figure out how we can bring more colors and more options for women.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming to the show, and good luck with your business moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Still to come, our panel of insiders takes on the top business stories of the week. But first, Indy-based USA Football has announced what it calls a groundbreaking partnership with TeachAids, a nonprofit leader in global education innovation. It aims to advance smarter and safer play. USA Football Director of Coaching Michael Kruger joined Bill Benner on Inside Indiana Sports.
Wonderful to have you on. Wonderful to have USA Football in Indianapolis. And most importantly, wonderful that they are leading this educational outreach effort, not just to coaches and the parents, but to the players themselves across the country.
Well, Bill, thanks for having us here. And we are excited about the new course that is in partnership with TeachAids and the Crash Course Group out of Stanford University. And USA Football recognized, along with the Crash Course Group, that there is a gap in the education that was happening. We're doing a really good job, we think, of educating parents and especially coaches on recognizing signs and symptoms of a concussive episode. Where we were maybe needing to improve the education was with athletes themselves. And Crash Course, a world-recognized group with TeachAids organization in interactive software, has developed a very interactive course that will help young athletes and athletes of all ages and athletes of all sports recognize signs and symptoms of a head possible concussive episode.
Yeah, folks, again, we're occupied right now in Indianapolis with the Colts opening there. But again, youth football, that's where it all begins. And for these youngsters to have an awareness of a concussive injury is really important.
It is. We find that athletes still, like I mentioned, coaches know what to look for, parents know what to look for, and we continue those education efforts. But the athletes themselves, not really able to know when I get or have something happen and I can recognize that sign or that symptom of something just doesn't feel right, the ability to tell someone, to tell a coach, but what to look for. And this program is very interactive. It's done in a way that engages the young athlete or the athletes and helps them recognize what these signs and symptoms are so they know to tell someone.
Yeah, I'm a 12-year-old and I'm playing Pop Warner or CYO. So I go online and then what happens?
Yeah, this is great because it has a virtual reality component to it, but and that's coming out very soon. It's already developed. But in terms of what a young athlete can do right now, or an athlete can do right now, I say young athlete, it really is beneficial even for you and I to take this. Anybody, a lot of coaches currently already taking this course just to get familiar with it. But it's very interactive. It puts the athlete in a football helmet and has you participate in a game, and it's kind of a choose your own adventure type scenario. And you experience a play and something happens and you have to choose, do I want to take a knee or do I want to come out of the game? And then it goes into explaining what the signs and symptoms are that you might be experiencing and what actually in an animated version is happening in your brain while you experience a concussion or a head injury, and why it's so important that you tell someone and that you allow some time for you to heal.
Rolled out just earlier this month, and you said you've already starting to get good feedback across the country.
Yeah, we haven't completely even started our full-on marketing efforts to let people know that this course is available online, but we've already had over 1,200 athletes take the course and another 800 that are either signed up or in the process of taking the course right now. So in just a little over a month and a half, close to 2,000 athletes have been impacted in a positive way.
Possible future applications quickly as we wrap up to other sports.
Absolutely. This is, even though you're in the football helmet and you're experiencing it within the context of a football game, this information is good for you regardless if you play football, baseball, basketball, volleyball, softball. It's good information for any athlete at any age to have so that they can recognize when something happens that they should tell a coach or an adult.
Okay, I'm a coach, I'm a young football player. How do I learn more, Mike?
Absolutely. USAfootball.com. If you go on our website, you can find the course there. Take the course. It's absolutely free. It's research-based. It's on the latest scientific information we have. You can find it and you will get a certificate of completion when you complete the course. It takes about 15 minutes, and the feedback that we're getting is people are really enjoying how interactive and how engaging it is. We'd love for people, especially athletes, to go on and take a chance and see what it's like.
All right, Mike Kruger, USA Football. So glad to have you on. Very
Thank you.
Helpful, useful information.
And finally, our group of insiders weighs in on Indiana's top business stories. This week's panel includes Veteran Strategy CEO Robert Vane, Marian University Educators College Dean Kenneth Britt, and Beck Communications Group President Laura Beck.
We will start with the convention business. Obviously, big business for Indianapolis and the Indianapolis region. This week, a good example, and a bit of an example, I think, Kenneth, of the diversity of conferences. We had the Cybertech Midwest Conference, which is a big global conference. I think this is one of the first times it's been in the United States, actually, really focused on cybersecurity, defense, a lot of economic development opportunities. But as you look at that kind of conference, 1,300 registered, kind of a win for Indianapolis and Indiana.
Absolutely. Anything that we can draw more businesses to thrive here in the city. When you think about cybersecurity, all the different breaches that we've had, in recent years, it's only going to continue to get worse over the next several years. And, shine a spotlight on Indianapolis for all the tech sector growth that we've seen is pretty incredible.
Well, and even some of the information that's come out from organizations that actually study the industry, there's a 3 million person gap in terms of jobs that are available in this. So there's this huge need. And when you think about Indiana, and you've got the Rolls-Royce Purdue partnership, you've got the sports element, and it all was coming down to on the same time that Robert Mueller was testifying about concerns with our election security going forward. So the Israeli government is really out front on this because they're so concerned about hostile nation-state takeovers with it. But it's heartening that they're here in Indianapolis because I think there's a lot of great lessons that can be learned here.
Yeah, Robert, opportunity, economic development-wise, you got the cybersecurity, you got the defense assets that are here as well. There are a lot of people at the state who really feel this is an opportunity to drive investment and jobs.
It is, and it's the exact kind of jobs you want. But a lot of these jobs need to start with grade school education. And you have places like Cold Spring School, which just got its STEM certification. It's part of the IPS network. And you also have organizations, initiatives like Women in Tech. Some of our former clients have been involved heavily in the tech field. So STEM education first, then we can fight these cyber terrorists as they get older.
Yeah, and you look as an economic development or a sector of the economy, Israel and the Consul General from Chicago came down this week and talked about agribusiness and cybersecurity as two really key issues, and those are areas where Indiana is trying to really make a name for themselves.
Yeah, and absolutely, and we are making great strides in it, and I think that when you do the international trade missions, it sometimes can be hard to defend those when you're an elected official making those travel arrangements. But it's really important to show that this is what we get out of it.
Yep. Another big conference this week, the National Urban League in Indianapolis for its conference. First time in 25 years that the Urban League had been in the Circle City. And I think, Kenneth, as you look at the impact, which is anywhere from $5 to $10 million of economic impact, but to have some of the top presidential candidates on the Democratic side being in here, being in Indianapolis, the focus on Indianapolis, that has some benefit too, I think.
Yes, the economic impact is important, but again, another spotlight on Indianapolis. It's different today than what it was 25 years ago. Indianapolis is a much stronger city. It's a much more vibrant city. So the Indianapolis Urban League, under the leadership of Tony Mason, doing a phenomenal job. There are tens of thousands of people that are going to be here watching those presidential conversations, hopefuls, those conversations is pretty incredible. They'll never forget it, and they'll never forget the great experience that they had here in downtown Indianapolis.
Well, it's fascinating because when you think about where we are as a country and the focus of this conference in terms of addressing economic disparities, addressing the racial divide in this country, Indianapolis has long been at the center of that reconciliation process
process. And so to have that here in our city really speaks to how welcoming we are, but it also speaks to we're a part of this discussion and a part as a community that does it well, and it does it as well as we can moving forward. And I think that is incredibly strong because it just builds on this legacy of the Urban League that started with Sam Jones and going back before that.
Going forward, that exposure, yeah.
Well, I agree with Dr. Britt about Tony Mason. He's phenomenal. And you can't mention Urban League in Indianapolis without mentioning Joe Slash, former deputy mayor for Bill Hudnut, who's an absolutely phenomenal watershed leader in this city's history.
Also news that really made headlines a week ago, but thought we'd talk about it this week, and that's the change in the downtown hotel plan. The original plans called for an expansion of the convention center, 2 hotels, 1,400 total rooms. Mayor Hogsett altered those plans, saying you want to go ahead and start with the convention center expansion and the 800-room hotel, and then would wait and see based on demand where that next hotel comes in. Good move from your perspective.
Yeah, I think it just shows that that's the kind of leader that Mayor Hogsett is. He's just incredibly pragmatic. He listens to all sides, and he really addressed the concerns. And he looks at it too from both the economic impact, the community impact, and then the overall planning aspect of it. So I think he made the right call on it.
I do think it's a good move. However, if we're going to compete with places like Atlanta, we have to have more hotel space. That's just a given. If you look at Gen Con that's coming up as an example, it's a major conference. Look at the secondary market of hotel stays. It's the Airbnb. You can look it up right now. It's 80% of the Airbnb market is completely filled during Gen Con. So the market is there, the demand is there, and it will eventually have to happen if we want to continue to compete.
Yeah, Robert, your take on that, because I think you're on the board at General Hotels, right? So you have a dog in the fight, so to speak. But how do you respond to that? Because there are people who, on the one hand, say, hey, it's good to listen, have that conversation continue. But on the other hand, say, we need to be more aggressive when it comes to business and the convention business.
Well, like I've said on television many times, I agree with Laura. Laura is exactly right.
Well said, Robert. Very good. Other news, on a more serious note and positive, but I guess you'd call it mixed news. Opioid deaths in Marion County dropped. The IU Public Policy Institute Center for Health and Justice Research released a number showing a decrease, but still those numbers, especially when it comes to opioids, very high.
It's staggering. We should, I think, be pleased that the number of deaths has decreased over last year. It was part of the governor's agenda when he first took over. I think that there are a number of organizations in our community that are focused on this. However, since 2010, the numbers are still 3 times higher this year than what they were at that point. So we have to continue focusing on prevention and treatment if we're going to get anywhere.
Well, there's a school of thought they could have dropped because there's more intervention, as well as people have access to naloxone or Narcan when they are in that situation. It's critically important that we continue to make a dent in it, but we also can't lose sight of the fact that there are other drugs out there like meth and fentanyl and all these other drugs that are out there, and we've got to keep our eye on the ball.
Robert, in your view, from the state level, the governor appointing the drug czar, Jim McClellan, longtime Goodwill Industries executive CEO, been a real push. Do you think this is an evidence maybe that starting to get some traction on this thing?
Well, to the point that was made just a few seconds ago, I mean, Governor Holcomb sees this as something no governor, either as governor or before governor, has traveled the state as much as Eric Holcomb has. He's seen all this firsthand in rural and urban communities throughout the Hoosier State. And for him to be so proactive and take a bit of a risk, because you're banking a little bit of your future and your time as governor on individual personal behavior. That's a tough bet sometimes, but kudos to the administration.
Yep. I only have about 30 seconds, but Colts camp opens up this week, so football is not far away. Laura, I'll give you the final words. I know we all are hoping for a great season, but is this another validation, I guess? Westfield has this, a 10-year contract for Grand Park up in Westfield.
I'd love to see him come to the east side, but a girl can dream. I just really am really hopeful this season that they can do well. Because it was Super Bowl. I mean, Steve Campbell told me Super Bowl.
Very good.
Super Bowl.
Robert Vane and Laura Beck, Kenneth Britt, thank you all very much. You threw me off on that one.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.